welcome everyone. I just want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy day to attend this briefing. I'm Lisa Ventimshi. I'm the New Mexico Congressional Delegation's Grants Coordinator, so I do work for all 5 members of the New Mexico Congressional Delegation. And I do want to introduce a couple of the Heinrich staffers that have been helping me with some of these presentations. First, Marissa Silva, she is the Senator's Economic Development Director. And then I want to introduce you to some of the field reps. First, we have Rita O'Connell, she is up in the north. And then Elia Quintanilla, she's also up in the north. Just want to wave. Thank you. David Torres, he's in the middle section of the state. And then Sylvia Yulia, I always pronounce her name wrong, I'm so sorry. She's in the southern half of the state. So if you guys are ever curious about reaching out to any of the Heinrich staff, or if you are trying to reach a hold of me, any of the 5 offices can help out, whether it's state or the DC office. And so before we begin, I just want to introduce Cheryl Thomas. She's our DOJ staffer that's going to be talking about the COPS programs. And so I'm going to show a quick video from Senator Martin Heinrich before I move the presentation over to her. Give me 1 second, everyone.
Hi, I'm Senator Martin Heinrich. I am grateful to all of the law enforcement officers, first responders, and victims advocates who protect New Mexico families and make all of our communities safer. Through my role on the Senate Appropriations Committee, I am committed to steering federal resources to New Mexico to improve community safety throughout our state. As part of that effort, I am proud to join the entire New Mexico Congressional Delegation in hosting a series of webinars to highlight federal funding opportunities through the U.S. Department of Justice. I hope that these sessions will help local and tribal governments, local law enforcement agencies, and community nonprofits throughout New Mexico learn more about the Department of Justice's grant programs. I would like to thank the Department of Justice staff who administer the application processes for these grant programs that support a wide array of law enforcement initiatives and assistance programs for crime victims. And I encourage all of the New Mexicans who are joining to keep working closely with me and my office to answer any further questions and to identify additional federal resources that might be a good fit for supporting your critically important work. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. And like the senator said, if you need to reach out to anyone on his staff, the field reps are present, the Economic Development Director is present, as well as myself, who represents all 5 offices. So with that, I will pass it off to Cheryl Thomas, and she will introduce herself and let you know how she'd like to proceed with questions as she goes through her presentation. Cheryl?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm glad to be here to present some information to you on our available COPS office resources, grant funding, other things that we've got available to offer to the field. I will be happy to take questions as we go through my presentation. If you're worried that you won't remember it by the time I get to the end, you can put something in the Q&A or chat box. I'm happy to address that later, however you see fit. So feel free to jump in if you've got questions. There's a lot of information I'm going to be presenting. I don't want to go too fast. I also don't want to go too slow and read every slide to you. So, just feel free to jump in whenever you have questions. So I am going to start sharing my screen. Okay, can I get a thumbs up, Lisa? Is that working? Great, thank you. Okay, I will start working my way through these slides as soon as I downsize something on my screen so I can see it. Great. Okay, so to give you a little bit of background about the COPS office, for those of you who aren't familiar with our funding, we were established by the Crime Bill, the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994. And originally we were established to fund 100,000 officers to add to our nation's streets. And everything we do, all of the programs we have, all of our funding, all of the technical assistance we provide is designed to advance public safety through community policing, focusing on proactive and collaborative efforts to prevent and respond to crime. Since 1994, when we were established, we have been appropriated over $20 billion over the years for a wide variety of initiatives. And that's not only for funding additional officers, but also programs on school safety, on domestic violence, on technology, a huge variety of programs, and they change over the years with administration priorities, as you can imagine. To date, we've now funded over 136,000 officer positions for more than 13,000 agencies nationwide. Next slide in just a second. Okay. A little bit more about cops. We are pleased to be the only agency within DOJ that has policing in its title, and we are dedicated solely to supporting law enforcement agencies across the country. And on our funding for this year, we have $663 million approximately to award. And as I mentioned, we do shift our programs with the administration priorities, but we've got a lot of flexibility to, as needs shift, as needs of the field change, to implement the Attorney General's priorities, as well as what the field considers to be critical needs. So how we do that is through three main ways. We've got three sort of buckets where our funding goes. We've got grants, we've got training, and we've got technical assistance. And the grants are direct funding to agencies and to organizations that support law enforcement. That's not only for the hiring of entry-level officers, but it's also for the other programs I've mentioned. School safety, anti-drug programs, tribal law enforcement, these sorts of direct grants. We offer training, and that's done through a variety of means. We offer in-person training. We offer train the trainer courses. We have an online training portal that I will discuss later. All of this will be discussed in depth. You're just getting the intro version now. And we have specific courses that we make available on things like active shooter response. We have funding for de-escalation training. And a lot of it is done so that it can be, the online classes are done so that it can be at your own pace. It can be for an entire agency. It can be for certain segments of an agency. It's really designed to help specific needs of an agency. And then lastly, our technical assistance funding. This is where we provide very tailored, focused technical assistance to agencies that are experiencing specific issues. And I will get into the various types of technical assistance we offer, but you may have heard of our Collaborative Reform Initiative Technical Assistance Center. Also we offer a huge variety of publications and knowledge products. We have guidebooks, we've got white papers, we've got all sorts of resources online, and all available free of charge for download. So this is just a snapshot of some of the funding that I will discuss today. This is our 2023 budget breakdown. And these are the programs I'm going to discuss, and you'll see all of them individually, so I won't spend too much time on this slide. I will start with our largest funding program. This is the COPS hiring program. For those of you who have been in the field for a while and doing this, it's been known as other names over the years, but it's always been focused on hiring, and it's been the COPS hiring program since 2010. And the idea of this program is we assist law enforcement agencies in hiring or rehiring career sworn law enforcement officers. And this idea is that all of the officers hired will be helping increase an agency's community policing capacity and crime prevention efforts. The funding is for state, local, territorial, and tribal law enforcement agencies that have primary law enforcement authority. And what we mean by that is if your agency is the one that responds when someone picks up the phone and calls 911 with a call for service, that means you've got primary law enforcement authority for that part of your jurisdiction. So if an agency has primary law enforcement authority, they're eligible to apply. This year, we have up to $224.5 million available to award, which is an increase of about $70 million over last year. So we're very pleased to have that increase in our appropriations this year. The program funds up to 75% of entry-level salary and fringe benefits, up to $125,000 per position. So I'll break that down. Again, this is for entry-level positions only. We can't offer funding to hire at a higher level than that. It's for entry-level positions, sworn full-time. And it does cap at $125,000 per officer position, and that's over a 3-year funding period. It's not $125,000 per year. It's $125,000 as the cap over the entire 3-year funding period. And now you'll see it says 3 years of funding over a 5-year award period. What that means is we know that agencies cannot hire on day one once the award is made. We know that it takes time to recruit. It takes time to get candidates through the training academy. We understand all of that. So there's delays in hiring. There can be pauses during the funding period when an officer that you've hired for whatever reason leaves the department, and now you've got to fill the position again. So there's a pause on when you're drawing down our funding. So rather than our old practice of having agencies request extensions repeatedly. We've just made it a 5-year award period for the life of expending the funds, but it's 3 actual years of funding. And it funds up to 75%, meaning there is a 25% minimum, 25% cash match on the grant, unless there is a waiver granted. During the time of application, you can request a waiver of the local match if you are experiencing severe fiscal distress. And there's a series of questions that'll be in the application that we would use then to judge whether or not you meet that threshold for severe fiscal distress and whether we can grant the waiver. And there's no cap on the number of officer positions that you can request. We may have to cap the incoming requests this year. Well, you can ask for anything. You can ask for 10 officer positions or 12 officer. We may have to put a cap on what we can award based on demand. We just won't know the demand from the field until our applications start coming in. The hiring categories are newly hired officers, or they can be rehired officers who have been laid off or have been scheduled to be laid off. They actually have a layoff date that you can document. This can be used to pick up the funding after that point. And we do have a retention requirement at the conclusion of the 3 years of federal funding. The idea is that every year of the 3-year funding cycle, your agency would draw down a little bit less from the federal share and put in more from the local share, slowly assuming the costs, the full costs of the officer position, so that by the conclusion of the 3 years of federal funding, your agency can now really build in the cost for that officer position. Following the end of the federal funding, there is then that 12-month retention requirement that you have to retain the positions. When you're applying for the COPS hiring program, applicants are required to identify a public safety problem that will be the focus of what the officers that we would be funding would be doing. There are 6 areas to choose from. For those of you who have been doing this for a while, there used to be many, many more. We have since basically just broken it down into 6 main categories. And you'll see that the first 4 there are in a darker shade of blue. Those areas in 2022 received priority consideration. Those were considered administration priorities. Agencies that said that the officers they would be hiring through this funding would be focused on one of those 4 areas: violent crime, combating hate and domestic extremism, police-based response to persons in crisis, and building legitimacy and trust, would basically receive what you can call bonus points during the application review process as we go through and score the applications. They would receive priority consideration. Those were the 4 areas in 2022. Can't really discuss what's going to be for 2023 until the program comes out, which, as you'll see, it says the COPS office anticipates opening in early March 2023. I will give you a heads up that by early March means pay attention this week to any of our blast emails if you signed up through GovDelivery on our website to receive blast emails, because there'll be a lot of information coming out very soon about the opening of the COPS hiring program. The other 2 areas that you see on there that aren't highlighted, Homeland Security and other innovations in policing, that last one is really sort of a catch-all for other areas. For example, if you were requesting a school resource officer, it would go into that other category. So I can move on from the COPS hiring program unless there's any questions right now that anybody has.
Cheryl, I just have one question just for confirmation. When you say matching funds in DOJ, is that matching funds mostly through the local municipalities and county and state level governments that you're looking for? Or is that just any matching fund that the department would get?
If an agency is awarded and whatever their local match is, I mean, it would be out of their local budget. They would have to figure out, and we do ask in the application what the intended source is. We just want to make sure that agencies really do understand that they will need a source for that local match.
Okay, thank you.
And it does have to be a cash match. Unfortunately, it can't be in kind for anything. So, okay, I'll move on to our school violence prevention program. Oh, and I'm sorry, I should say that this entire presentation, later on there will be websites, there will be more details that you might want. This entire presentation will be available to you after I'm done today. You'll be able to get all of the slide deck and everything that you need. So don't feel like you have to scurry to write down a website or anything like that. So the School Violence Prevention Program, this was created through the Stop School Violence Act of 2018. And funding through that is divided between the COPS office and our sister agency, the Office of Justice Programs. for different purposes that do relate to school security. And the COPS funding for it goes through the 5 bullets that you see listed there. Coordination with law enforcement, training for law enforcement officers to prevent student violence. The majority of our funds in this area go to what we consider target hardening for metal detectors, locks, lighting, camera systems, other deterrent measures, bulletproof glass, that sort of thing. Technology for expedited notification of local law enforcement during an emergency, which really comes down to panic button systems. This is just a very long way of saying it, but it's panic button emergency notification systems, and any other measures that don't fall neatly into those areas, providing a significant improvement in school security. This program does not fund the hiring of school resource officers. So that, if you're interested in getting a school resource officer, that is something that you would do through the COPS hiring program. The awards go directly to states, local government, tribes, and other public agencies, which includes law enforcement agencies and includes school districts. However, we do not fund individual schools. So the funding can go to a school district, but just not an individual school. And then grant recipients can also contract to local educational agencies or nonprofits, whatever they see fit if they're working with. You might have a private school in your jurisdiction that also you can use the funding for that. So, but those are sort of contracts or subawards that you would be responsible for. In 2023, our appropriations for the program was $53 million. We also will have $20 million coming through the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. So those two pots combined will have $73 million. The purposes under the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act are identical. The language is identical to the Stop School Violence statute. So all $73 million will be used to make the SVPP awards. We have a maximum of $500,000 per award on this program. It does, like the COPS hiring program, have a minimum 25% cash match. We also do have the waiver option, requesting a waiver of the local match due to severe fiscal distress. And it's a 3-year grant period. And we will be opening the school violence prevention program solicitation a bit later in March. Now, I'm going to discuss these two programs very quickly, this one and the next one, the Anti-Heroin Task Force program, and on the next slide, you'll see the Anti-Methamphetamine program. And the reason I'm just going to discuss them briefly is because these programs, we can only make one award per state, and it goes to a state-level agency. So there would be one state-level New Mexico agency that would receive funding under this program. But the reason I'm discussing it is that because it's a task force structure for the program, the state agency has to partner with local law enforcement agencies throughout the state in implementing the funding. So we want to make sure that you all make sure that your state agency applies for this funding and that you get involved, make sure that you're encouraging them to apply. So the Anti-Heroin Task Force program is aimed at combating heroin, fentanyl, carfentanil, illegal prescription opioids, and it's for investigative purposes. It is not for, we do not fund naloxone, we do not fund treatment, but it's all for investigative purposes. And this year we have $35 million available with a maximum of $4 million per award. So on average, we make, depending on demand, we can make 12, 15 awards a year, depending on what different states come in for. This program is currently open and it will close on April 25th. And you're going to see throughout each of these slides that where there's open ones, that there's 2 different closing dates. And I'll discuss that when I get into grants.gov versus the Just Grants program system and how you apply. As similar to the anti-heroin, as I said, anti-methamphetamine is again just for investigative purposes and combating methamphetamine trafficking and distribution. So it's not for cleanup, for example. This program, we have $16 million available this fiscal year. Awards on this one actually have a $1 million minimum award threshold and a maximum of $2 million per award. And it's got the same closing date of April 25th. So our Tribal Resources Grant Program, we use the department's Coordinated Tribal Assistance Solicitation process, the CTAS process, where our funding for tribes and the Office of Justice programs, different programs that they have for tribes, are all under one general solicitation with different purpose areas. And one of those purpose areas under COPS addresses what we can fund, which is, as you'll see on the third bullet, this is another program that will hire or rehire full-time officer positions. And through this one, we can also procure fund the procurement of basic equipment and training for police officers. The idea of having this one solicitation is that it's sort of a one-stop shop to go for a bunch of different tribal needs. But there are areas that we fund the officers and their equipment. Officer justice programs funding can go for different juvenile justice purposes and victimization purposes and a variety of other needs. This solicitation is currently open. It closes on March 28th. So I'm not sure if we have any tribes that are on today, but if there are, definitely make sure that you, at the end, we'll have a link to the website that you check everything out. And I'm hoping that you've started the process already. The grant application process is not always the quickest process to go through. COPS also provides funding for the expansion and deployment of the Tribal Access Program, which we do not make direct funding, but we contribute the funding so that tribes will have access to national crime information databases and technical support. The Collaborative Reform Initiative. This is not a grant program, but this is one of the technical assistance services that we offer. There are 3 levels of what we call collaborative reform assistance. The first one, the first bullet, is through what I mentioned earlier, the Collaborative Reform Initiative Technical Assistance Center. And this is led by IACP and other leading law enforcement stakeholder associations. And it's tailored technical assistance provided at no cost to your agency. That's something I really want to stress, that there is no cost for whatever you see as a specific need that you're trying to address. You may be having a problem in business areas that are having problems with those experiencing homelessness and loitering issues. You may be having problems with open air drug markets. You may be having problems with policing mass demonstrations. It can be on basically any topic under the sun. We have, I think there are 60 or 65 different bulleted areas when you're on the website looking at that we mention that we will help with. But then if there's anything else, just ask and we will help with that as well. And by tailored technical assistance, basically our folks at the CRITAC Center will look through and talk to you and see what your needs are and come up with a plan. So it could be something as simple as pointing you to the right resources or getting you the right training. It can be more in depth. It can be setting you up in sort of a peer mentoring situation with other agencies that have gone through similar problems and go through some of their approaches that have worked and talk through that. It can be on-site assistance for them to take a closer look with some of the leading subject matter experts to go through and see what they recommend. So it can be a very simple process. It can be a little bit more involved depending on what your needs are. But again, this is at no cost and at your request. The second bullet is the critical response program. This is more in depth. This is really sort of an after action type of technical assistance for agencies that have experienced high profile events or major incidents. So you'll see it lists after action reviews and targeted assistance after an incident has occurred. And then the idea is we can take the lessons learned from that incident and disseminate it to the field so that everybody can benefit from the lessons learned. And the third is an organizational assessment sort of area of assistance. And that's the most intensive. That can be 6 months to a year. That can be having people on site for quite a while and sort of a full review of your operations, sort of a top to bottom look through the entire organization to see what areas can be improved upon, their recommendations. A detailed report is provided at the end of the engagement so that you have something to work from. These do take quite a bit of time. But again, I want to stress that all of this is done at no cost and all of this is at the agency request. We don't come in and any review does not result in anything mandated. This is all at your request to suit your needs.
Cheryl, we did have a question regarding tribal funding. Can it be used to restart a police department that was previously disbanded?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the first part about starting up?
Can you restart a police department that was previously disbanded with tribal funding?
Well, the funding is just for the hiring of officers. So I think the way we look at it is the same under our COPS hiring program for agencies that are disbanded, just non-tribal agencies. Same idea is there has to be something documenting the agency is being reestablished. So it can't be, if you give us this money for these officers, then we'll be able to start the program. We need to see that it's actually in place, that the department is being reestablished first.
Okay.
The Community Policing Development Program. This is sort of our innovative program. This is where we get to look at innovative strategies and best practices and new approaches to community policing and to preventing crime. And it changes, again, with administration priorities and congressional priorities over the years. And this year, we have 5 very specific areas that the funding is going to go towards. I will go through all of those. The first one is crisis intervention. We have funding that'll go towards expanding the use of crisis intervention teams to embed mental and behavioral health services with law enforcement. The second is de-escalation training. It's not only to provide training to fund agencies for individual training in de-escalation, but also to fund the creation and development and delivery of that training. Accreditation is for expanding accreditation programs and assisting agencies with gaining accreditation. The COPS microgrants program, the 4th bullet, that's really sort of our really creative seed money program. If you've got an idea for a small scale project, and you're thinking something that you need maybe 50,000, 100,000 for, a small project that you want to implement to address this very specific problem. And I'll give you an example. Maybe you've got issues with kids between the hours of 3 and 6 after school, but before parents get home, and you're looking to create some sort of after school program that they'll want to be in, maybe teach them more about law enforcement, maybe create a juvenile academy of sorts, some program that you want to get going. And you just don't have the money to get it started. You just need a little bit of a boost, and you've got the idea. You just need the seed money. This is where you can come and apply for that. It's creative ideas that can advance crime fighting or community engagement. And the idea is, we're hoping that these would be replicable ideas, that if it goes over really well and you've got a success story, we'll want to hear about it. We'll want to write an article about it. We've got our newsletters and tweet, and we'd be happy to share all of that with the field so that they can take the ideas and put them into place as well. And then the last bullet there is tolerance, diversity, and anti-bias training. This is not one that agencies can apply for. This is one that we will fund a training provider who will then make the training available to the field. So these different initiatives will all open. We're going to have staggered dates for when they open, so we're not throwing everything open all at once, so you're not trying to apply for 5 different grants at the same time. So these are going to open on a rolling basis throughout March. Again, for a couple of these, pay close attention later this week. They may be opening very soon. I have to couch it that way because in case anything goes wrong, I don't want to be blamed if I was telling people that, oh, it's going to open on a given date, and then it doesn't. So really, really soon. The Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Act program. It's a government program, so it's LEMHWA. Sorry for the acronym. LEMHWA funds are used for improving mental health and wellness services in law enforcement agencies. And we're very, very proud of this program. We feel honored to be able to offer it to law enforcement agencies. We appreciate everything that our agencies and our officers do for us. And this is just, we're happy to give back something that we know what officers go through on a daily basis. We know the stress and the trauma that they can face, and anything that the COPS office can do to help, we're very proud to. So this funding goes for a variety of emotional and mental health services. It can be on suicide prevention programming. It can be on peer mentoring. It can be officer of family services, stress reduction, a wide variety. And it can be both for an individual agency or a consortium of agencies if they decide that that's the easiest way to get a good service up and running, to band together. And it's not just for officers, it's also for first responders in general. I mean, it can be for dispatch. We know they're the same things that they go through. So you can see it says incorporating civilian staff. This program has already opened, but will remain open until April 21st. We received $10 million for this program this year, which is an increase over $8 million last year. So we're hoping that it continues to build. I want to discuss the preparing for active shooter situations training for just a minute. This is our PASS training. This is for active shooter training, basically, scenario-based training. It's for law enforcement and other first responders, so fire, EMS, all of that. And this is not one where you apply for training funds. We fund one training provider, and then that training provider makes the training available to agencies nationwide. So currently our PASS funded provider is ALERT at Texas State University. That's the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training Center at Texas State University. And they're really the gold star standard for this type of training. So as you can see, it's for cross-disciplinary active shooter training. And there's also things like scenario libraries online. There's e-learning modules. There's a bunch of different things. You can either go to Texas State University for the training, or we always recommend that a bunch of agencies sort of create a regional group, and then Texas State University ALERT can come on site and do the training there. So they'll work with you to figure out what works best for your agency. And there's the website through the COPS office website. It'll then link you to ALERT. I mentioned our training portal before. This is our online training module. There is no cost for it. It's we keep adding. I do not know how many classes we currently have. There's a couple dozen classes, and we are adding new ones all the time. And these are really high quality classes. They can be for individual officers to take. They can be offered to classes in a training academy. They can be officers doing their in-service training. It's a wide variety. There's case studies and videos, and it's very interactive. So a number of options available. The website is there, and again, everything is at no cost to your agency. I wanted to mention something very specific to this group. I'm not sure if any of you are aware, but there is another presentation tomorrow for New Mexico law enforcement agencies, specifically on the training portal. This is being done through the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I know that it is tomorrow at 10. I'm not the person presenting this one. This will be somebody who actually oversees our end of the training portal. We work with a service provider on that, but this will be the COPS lead on it. So I've got the website up there, and you do have to pre-register, but it's a quick process. But just so you can get it and then get the link, I would do so at least an hour before the presentation begins. You'll hear about the training portal. You'll hear about some of the other training and technical assistance that I've gone through briefly. You're going to hear about that in much more detail if you're interested.
Cheryl, we have a question related to these courses. Are they accredited in any sort of way, or is there like a certificate for certain topics that an agency or an individual can get through DOJ?
A couple of states have accredited them, because that would be up to each state's, to make that decision. But I would go to the website and check, because I know that there's a lot more information available on that. I'm sorry, that I don't have, which and how that works, that I don't have off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Or you'll hear about it a lot more if you attend this presentation tomorrow on the training portal. So preparing to apply, we can't stress this enough. Please start the process early. The deadlines come up really quickly, and computers are finicky and systems are finicky, and things don't always save as they should. So please do start the process early. Even when it works perfectly smoothly, it is not a quick application process. It's done through two different portions. You start by applying through, the first part of the application is done through the grants.gov. That's the government-wide application system. And then when that part is completed, you'll be given the ability to move into the Just Grant system. That's the DOJ grant application system. We share that with the Office of Violence Against Women and the Office of Justice Programs. So please pay attention. They've got different deadline dates. Grants.gov is usually several days before the Just Grants one. So you've got to do the first piece before you do the second. So please don't wait until right before the application deadline. Please give it plenty of time. Make sure you've reviewed it thoroughly and that you do save it frequently while you're working in Just Grants. On the COPS office website, we have got two different links there. One is how to apply, and it says it's a 2022 document, but it's pretty much the same. We'll just be updating it and tweaking it throughout as things come up in 2023, but the 2022 document will be fine for you. Tips on how to apply and to prepare your application. And then there's an online tutorial as well, a video tutorial. And just how to reach us if you've got questions, if you want to download our resources. Like I said, we've got all of the publications and reports on our website, and those can all be downloaded through our COPS Resource Center free of charge. Everything, you can get to everything through the COPS website, which is listed right there, cops.usdoj.gov. If you have any questions about anything, please call our response center. The number is listed there. Chances are good that you'll get a voicemail, but you'll get a call back almost immediately, just because of the way the system now works and what we can do with, we have a lot of people teleworking and how the system works in getting the phone calls out. So chances are good you will get a voicemail, just leave a message, you'll get a call back very soon. You will see we've got our Twitter feed, our Facebook page, we've got a YouTube channel with more videos on applying and some helpful tips and lots of other things. We've got our newsletters, we've got a video series called The Beat, a number of things that are available through these. And that really concludes what I've got. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing, and I will be happy to take any questions that anyone's got.
I think that there's one program that I wasn't really aware of, and I think it might not be top of mind for our law enforcement agencies, but this idea of the micro credential or the micro grants. Wondering, like, there's areas in my neck of the woods where we see kids being recruited to traffic either drugs or people. And I know that this is something that some of those law enforcement agencies are not sure kind of what to do. Is this something that they could like create a proposal for? And then just wondering like how competitive those grants might be, as far as like, does DOJ get a lot of requests for that grant?
We do get a lot of requests. It is quite competitive. And one thing that we do have is each year we do have specific areas that we ask that the applications come in under. So it's not a wide open thing. We do have some, I think there's 6 this year. And let me just theoretically, not that I would be giving away information before the program opens, but I could give you ideas maybe what they could be this year, if you'll hang on just one second. So for example, areas could include recruitment, retention, and workforce diversification, underserved populations, building trust with the community, hate crimes, community violence intervention. So those might be some of the areas that we're looking at this year.
And when you
As
say
examples.
building trust, I noticed that was another category that was prioritized by DOJ.
Yes.
What does that actually mean? Like, can you give some examples of that?
Sure, it's community engagement. It's not just, being around, but it's attending the community meetings, and it's being there at, for a coffee with the cop type situation. And it's that type of, it can take so many different forms depending on the agency and depending on the population, but it's really community engagement. It's another way of saying that, but also not just being out there, but getting the feedback. It's got to be a two-way thing. It's not enough for the officers just to be present, but they need to be listening, and they need to, invite that type of input as a way of building trust.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, does anyone have any more questions real quick before we start wrapping up? Staff or our guests? Okay,
And I would just encourage everybody to check our website pretty frequently over the next few weeks. Sign up if you're interested in getting our notifications. Come to our website and you can pick on the option to sign up through GovDelivery to find out when our solicitations open. So, yeah. And if you've got any questions, call that response center number. We are happy to help.
Okay, Excellent. Well, if there's no more questions, I do want to thank everyone for attending and to thank Senator Heinrich's staff for helping put on today's presentation. I will say that as the grants coordinator, if y'all have any questions related to grants, grant searches, or if you do decide to apply, my office is able to work with you all for a letter of support on behalf of your project that we do send to the agencies. So if you have any questions, those emails will be coming around later with the webinar's recorded session, as well as the slides that Cheryl had just talked about. And in addition, I will send the grants advisor as well and stuff. And that does get produced weekly. I do monitor all those sites that do produce these grants. So like Cheryl said, the March dates will most likely end up on my grants advisory sooner or later. So if you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out. I am available through any of the delegation members' offices. So you can call anyone and start pronouncing my last name, which is Van Timshi, but they will all know who you're talking about. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Cheryl, so much for presenting all this information, and we look forward to working in the future. Thank you, everyone.